Hey, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, as usual, before I begin with this lesson, I want to start it off by giving all the glory and infinite praises, as well as by facing the east to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shah, by Hashem Rakaha Kadash. Double honor to the elders and the apostles, great millstone, who I'm taught and learn this truth 100% from. Peace and blessings be to all you Akim. Them that are serving Yahweh Shema Shah sincerity, hoping for mercy and salvation in these last days, man. To you I say Shalom and Yahweh Shema Shah Barakathum. America would be a war zone. Babylon the Great will be a war zone. And I got a couple of videos that I want to play on this police raid that it took place in Rio, Brazil. If I ain't mistaken, I think it was on the 28th. The 28th of October this month, where, they basically, swept the streets, right? Swept the streets from, all the murders, the sex traffickers, the drug traffickers, so on and so forth. Basically, criminals. The same thing, right? The same, draconian measures or the same approach, I would say that, right? The same approach that El Salvador had took towards the MS-13 gang members, right? Which was an aggressive approach. And within the process of that, you had people, being unalived. You had people being wounded, so on and so forth. It's like I said, I got some videos that I want to play, because it was people actually, they actually lived there. They was recording the shit that was going on, man. All right. And at some type of level, it made me think of how Jacob's trouble could be. And we know that America's going to be far more devastating than what, any of that could be. Because Babylon is going to be the cherry on top. All right. That's why it's going to be the last place to kick off. Right. You got all these other nations, they wondering, why these Babylonians ain't did shit yet. You got guns, you got firepower. Why the fuck you ain't, rising up against your mayors, burning shit down, all right? And believe you me, it's gonna get to that point. All right, second is the 15th chapter and the 19 verses is screaming off the pages, man. It's gonna get to that point, man. All right, but the Most High is saving the best for last. But you got over 300 million plus firearms in America alone that are registered. That's not including the ones that are unregistered. All the illegal shit. All the shit that, Jake got on the streets and that these Edomites just got, hidden behind closed doors because they'll fuck around and get fed time before they got. All right? It's shit like that out here. This is why it's going to be that chaotic in the streets of America, man. Right? Plus Esau playing on the emotions of the people here. Shit gonna be hella desperate here. People gonna be real desperate here, man. And you do a lot of desperate things when you under desperate measures. All right, you gonna have people fighting and scrapping over food. People gonna be shooting it out over food and shit. All right, America gonna be far more devastating than what people can even imagine, man. All right, and since this is the land of unwalled villages where people believe that shit is all fairy tale and sparkles, you know what I mean? This is why the Most High is saving the best for last. All right, he's saving the proud, right, for the worst, in other words, man. All right, but yeah, I got a couple of videos that I want to play real quick, and then I'm gonna grab some scriptures. All right. But as you see in the caption, at least 64 people were killed in a massive police raid directed against organized crime in Rio de Janeiro. Among those killed are 4 policemen, authorities added. All right, let's play this video real quick. this gonna be a soon reality here in Babylon the Great, man. Right, where you seeing the sky smoky from shit burning, buildings being set on fire, shit getting blown up, gunshots all in the background echoing. This is gonna be a reality real soon, man. Seeing people walk around with AR-15s and you know what I mean, just walking around open carry, in other words, man. And there ain't gonna be shit that nobody can do about it because it's gonna be every man for himself, man.
In Brazil, a massive raid on the gang of accused drug traffickers killed at least 60 suspects yesterday. The raid in Rio de Janeiro involved 2,500 police officers and soldiers. 4 officers died in the operation. Local officials say 81 suspects were arrested and more than half a ton of drugs were seized. Human rights groups want an investigation, calling the raid one of the most violent police operations in Brazil's recent history. The UN Office of Human Rights said it was horrified. In Brazil, a massive raid on the gang.
And I'm gonna just stop it right there just in case Esau start, you know what I mean? Start trying to get all soft. All right. But it was bodies lined up in the street. It said 40 to 60. All right. So that's just a cakewalk compared to what it would be here. All right. 40 to 60 people being unalive, that ain't shit compared to what, to the amount of death that's gonna be here in Babylon, man. You know, the scripture tells you in the book of Psalms 91, 1,000 at thy left and 10,000 at thy right, man. In these more populated cities, San Diego, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, all these major cities, it's gonna be the worst. All these heavily populated cities, this is gonna be far more worse than what people can even expect it to be. All right, because I was mentioning the Insurrection Act. So if you have these veterans, because these Edomites already know that this shit's over with. All right, you got Edomites that got faith in things being built back and America being so-called great again. But a lot of these Edomites they already know this shit's over with. This shit done for. America ain't returning. It's just a matter of time until this shit, collapses. All right, and I know that because I done heard this from about 4 or 5 different Edomites. All right, 4 or 5 different Edomites. As a matter of fact, it's an Edomite I do side work with. He tell me that he just waiting for a civil war. All right, and that he's not worried. All right, and I done heard this from about 4 or 5 Edomites, like I said, and every single last one of them has been in the spirit of prepping, the spirit of gun. They've even shown me their guns and shit. So these Edomites know, man. All right, they know that this shit is over with. It's just a matter of time until, basically shit hits the fan here. All right. So the first scripture that I want to grab, let's go to the book of Nahum 3 in verse 1, and it reads, "Woe to the bloody city, it is all full of lies and robbery, the prey departeth not." And this is another code name for America in the scriptures, because America was founded, right? The foundation of America, right? Babylon the Great is founded on the blood of the Israelites, right? Starting with the Northern Kingdom, and then, them bringing the Southern Kingdom over here in 1619, that added more to it, right? And even still to this day, because you got Jake being killed by, these Edomites and, police, shit like that. You find Jake being found, hung on trees and shit still, right? And believe you me, these Edomites, they really gonna show their horns when nobody's gonna give a fuck about that social media shit, and damn sure not when we basically in a purge-like society where you ain't gonna go to jail for anything you do because there ain't gonna be no damn police stations. The police gonna be, at their homes trying to protect their family, moving around like pilgrims trying to, survive and take care of their own, man. They're not gonna be worrying about what anybody else has to do. That's why America's gonna be, it's basically gonna be a dog-eat-dog society, right? Every man for himself. All right, there's not gonna be a 911, first call responders. This shit gonna be ugly out here. All right, and like I said, it's gonna be a war zone. It's gonna be people trying to break into each other's homes. You gonna hear gunshots go off because they defending what they got in there that the other person won't. You know what I mean? It's gonna be a whole lot of bloodshed out here. All right, so that's another reason why America will be known as the bloody city, because the scripture even says until the horse is bridled, man. That's a whole lot of bloodshed, man. All right, and that don't mean that blood is gonna rise literally 6 feet, about 6 feet, but that's just symbolic for the Most High doing a lot of killing, man. All right, starting with Jacob's trouble, a time like never before, man. All right, the noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and of the prancing horses and of the jumping chariots, and that's going into, these military vehicles. I spoke about the Insurrection Act of 1807. Have martial law basically be declared, and you're gonna have the military in the streets. They gonna have their tanks, right? Because there's even videos of tanks being moved, close to cities without, or matter of fact, with rubber on their wheels and shit. The only reason a tank would have rubber on his wheels is if it's gonna be in the street, right? Because tanks are usually in dirt and things of that nature. That's why it's meant, or that's why it's built to roll the way it rolls, man. All right, they put rubber on the tank wheels whenever they're in the streets. They put them on them because they plan on ushering them into these streets, man. They gonna have their military Humvees, the shit with the 50 cals on top of them. They gonna have all of that, man. The armored vehicles, and like I said, it might not even be. It might be a foreign troop in an American uniform speaking with a different accent to your ass, man. But he harsh with it though. All right, because the Lord spoke about how they gonna, the spirit that they gonna have from over here. They basically gonna have a spirit of vengeance. It's gonna be women getting took. It's gonna be people getting unalived in the process of that. Houses getting kicked, doors getting kicked off the hinges and everything, man. All right. Here's the point. The horseman lifted up both a bright sword and a glittering spear. All right. And matter of fact, what I can do, this is the reason why Nahum described it as a bright sword or a glittering spear. Right? Because back then they didn't talk like how we talk now. Right? And I say that a lot because Jacob read things, literal, verbatim. It wasn't a little glittering spear or sword that he had saw. You know what I mean? It was symbolic for him seeing, these farms basically being exchanged, because you have that flame, right, or that fire that comes out the tip of the barrel when it's basically, when the bullet is, basically, it's let off. In other words, man. All right, but let me pull it up real quick. Damn, I don't even know how to word it. I'm gonna just say, all right, here we go. Salakia. Damn. All right, but this is why Jeremiah had basically, not Jeremiah Salakia, but Nahum had referred to firearms as a glittering spear or a bright sword. All right, because when the gun is let off, it basically lets off that spark, right? That flame. All right. And within seconds, what do you see after that? Right? Or what's the possibility of that? You can see bodies laid out, right? Mass shootings, wherever the case may be. All right. And the scripture's gonna go into that. Watch. The horseman lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain. All right. Because one gun, what was popular now is the switch. All right, you could have 100 bullets in that damn drum, and within 6 seconds, all them bullets gonna be gone. All right, and if it's 100 people standing in front of you, and you got the accuracy, hey, you can lay down all of them. All right, even if you just, somebody know how to shoot, give them a gun. All right, he gonna lay them all down, man. All right, that's what that's going into, man. All right, it says, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. All right, so many dead bodies that you're going to be having to stumble over shit. You know what I mean? You're going to be going and, trying to pass through certain parts of the city. And it's going to be after a damn, a gunfight took place. It's going to be people laid out everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Right after a raid, like how they show you in the Purge when they was going to the projects where Jake was and basically raiding shit. And they wasn't just grabbing people up. They was laying people down, man. Blowing people back. And that's spoken about in Luke the 19th chapter. Right, as a matter of fact, we can grab that real quick. Luke 19 and 42, saying, if thou hast known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee. Wake up, Jake. You know what I'm saying? Because Esau basically setting a trap. All right? And compass thee round and keep thee in on every side. And when you take a look at the projects or where Jake's community is at, more than likely they have railroads next to them. You know what I mean? I know where I'm from. Everywhere that Jake was at, they were kind of close to the railroads and shit. All right? And through the spirit, that's going to be because they're going to ship your ass off to the nearest FEMA camp. All right? They're going to throw you on them trains or on them boxes, and they're going to ship you to the nearest FEMA camp. All right? They already talking about setting them up, and they talking about this shit openly. They're not even hiding it no more. All right? And you can look up a FEMA camp map, and it's over 800 FEMA camps in Babylon alone, if not more than that. All right? But for the days shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee round and keep thee in on every side and shall lay thee even with the ground. Right? What does that mean? Right? What does it mean to get laid even with the ground? Right? Meaning you're going to get sent back to the spirit world. And thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of that visitation. All right? So it's not just going to be, men getting put down. It's going to be women. It's going to be children. You know what I mean? The Most High finna have this shit get ugly out here. All right? The Most High is not a respecter of persons. And y'all finna see that firsthand, man. It's going to be people running around with their kids. Out of nowhere, kids are going to get dome checked. You know what I mean? gonna be missing his head. You ain't gonna have no choice but to keep running because somebody dumping at you. There's gonna be situations like that. All right. People, in the grocery stores and shit, fighting over food and they end up letting off shots. They show you that in these movies where it's basically like a pre-apocalyptic scene or movie where shit's starting to kick off and people start rushing to the grocery stores and panicking, in panic mode, and you got people in there with their rifles and they snipers and shit, like in World War Z. Brad Pitt, he was in the grocery store with his sniper and he ended up getting into some shit, man. All right. But the Most High's finna have it get ugly out here, man. Let's go to the book of 2nd Ezra. Another common one that we bring out, but like I said, man, this scripture screaming off the pages right now. All right, we got to start at 15. 2nd Ezra 15 and 15, for the sword and the destruction draw nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. People gonna be, it's gonna be the norm to see somebody walking around with, a big ass og, a scar. You know what I mean? Some shit like that. People walking around with their handguns in their hands, not just on their hip, in their hands, because at any given moment something can happen where they got to defend themselves. All right, it ain't gonna be where you can just walk outside freely like how we can now, kick back, be comfortable, and not have to, really worry too much about somebody doing some inhumane shit. But it's gonna get to that point, man. For there shall be sedition among men. All right, sedition is, a uprising of people. Like a uproaring of people. Like a, stirred up. In other words, man. Right, and invading one another, and they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. This is why Esau is going to declare for martial law. This is why they're going to, activate the Insurrection Act of 1807, because people are not going to be regarding the kings or princes. Nobody's going to be listening to what the mayor of the city got to say, the state governor. They're not going to be listening to what Donald Trump got to say. So they going to allow the military to take over and basically push draconian measures, man. All right. And they're going to get pushback from that, which is going to lead to shit getting real ugly. I'm going to just say that. All right. And they shall not regard their kings nor princes, in the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, because the military gonna be blocking these cities off, man. Right? You gonna have to show your digital, your digital ID, right, in order to go here and there and pass through here, and you know what I mean? A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And that's pretty much the point on that. All right, but things are going to, turn for the worse here in Babylon, right? It's the best for us, but, the worst for, people here. I'll just say that. So, with that being said, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Lord willing, points, was made in this lesson, and then my sacrifice was acceptable in the eyes of Yahweh by Shema Shah. With that being said, Shalom, blah, 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 man.